You know what? My first memory of my style being out of the norm is probably when I was, well, it was a pretty young age. My mom dressed me up as Shirley Temple, and I was about 3 years old. I actually don't remember this, but I remember looking at the pictures. But I was Shirley Temple with the curly wig and the tap shoes, even though I didn't even know how to walk at 3 years old. The story is that I actually started rolling because I was kind of a chubby kid, and I started rolling into walking. There was no crawling in between, so that was probably it. And then my mom proceeded to start drawing mustaches on my face, even going to school with liquid eyeliner. So that was a little strange.
So coming from that, does that inspire you now? Or what inspires you at this time
You know what inspires me the most right now is my family and what I know. I grew up in a very religious Catholic family, and I live in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. We're fifth generation Mexican Catholic, and we go to this church called Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is about a block away from where I live now. And I just look out my door and I'm so inspired by the energy and the love that I've received from my family and the support. Man, I don't even know how to explain it, but the thing about it, at the church, I was baptized there, I had my first communion, I did my confirmation, and that's just, it's about tradition and what I really know. I don't really seek anything else than my family.
So like you said, you use a lot of unique cultural elements in your design, like from Day of the Dead to things that are almost Santeria inspired.
Right.
Is that where this connection between those elements came from?
Um, I just think that for me, I was brought up very religious, and I can accept those, I don't even know what you would call them, teachings, but it's a matter of respect and family values, tradition. For me, even though I might not practice the quote unquote family norm and traditions, I feel like I owe that to my family for as much as they've given me to respect that, and I think that really reflects in my design as well.
So this is definitely a question you could ask any gay kid. What was your high school experience like?
Well, my high school experience was really great. I left. Do we need to hold? This was us in New York because we'd always shoot in Parsons, and then it would be like, and we'd just be like,
Re-say the thing you just said.
mm-hmm. Maxine, can you stay by that phone? Just kidding.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Okay, so can you repeat that question back, Josh?
Sure.
The high school thing, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
So this is definitely an interesting question you can ask any gay guy. What was your high school experience like?
My personal high school experience was very unique, very good. I grew up playing the piano since I was 8 years old, and I had the opportunity to go to a performing arts school in Denver, and so I was a piano major. And unlike other high schools, it wasn't really about a popularity contest. It's really about who was the most talented and who really had the drive and who really wanted to go out and really show what they were made of. And, being a piano major, it allowed me to really not showcase what I was wearing or what I was talking about. It was really about what I could accomplish through my music. And so I'm very grateful for that experience.
So to go into a performance arts school, that probably made you a little more comfortable with yourself and being in a more environment that's a little more artistic. Did that affect your experience with coming out? And at what point did you choose to do that?
I think everything happens for a reason. Everything leads up to a certain point. And I don't think that you're ever going to be 100% comfortable with who you are. I think you're always going to have insecurities. Going to a performing arts school, and there were little queens and the girls and everybody else there. And our teachers embraced us. They really knew that we had a passion for what we did, whether we were visual artists or theater majors or dance majors or musical majors, instrumental majors. So we definitely had a sense of self, but I don't think that ever contributed to how I came out. I feel, when I came out, it was really hard. It was actually inspired by one of my best friends. Her name was Stephanie, and she wrote me this letter that I kept on reading over and over during our senior year. And finally, yes, I'm that guy that was in marching band. I was a marching band geek. And by the way, you're not really geeks if you're in marching band, okay? Okay, anyway, so she wrote me this letter, and I kept on reading it all through the year, and I think it was at our last performance, I read it again, and something triggered, and I was like, why do I allow myself to hide from who I am? I trust that my parents will love me no matter what I do or what I choose. And I guess for me to say what I choose is really difficult because that's what I've learned. I don't think it's a choice. It's just a matter of fact. And so I read this letter once again. We left the final marching event, and I told my mom on the highway in Denver, and the first thing she told me was like, don't let the family know, and I'm not telling your dad. So it really bothered me. I was really kind of confused more at that point, and I went home and I was so upset. I just went into the house and I yelled at my dad, I'm gay, and I ran downstairs and I called my friend Stephanie, and I just started to laugh hysterically because it was such a relief.
So what inspired you to move to New York, and what was your life like at that time?
When I moved to New York, I had won this portfolio contest for this design competition, and it was an opportunity for me the prize of winning the portfolio contest was to go out there and just kind of check out New York, visit the business and whatnot, and kind of see how the industry is, rolling. But me being a really savvy young entrepreneur, I packed all of my clothes that I had made for myself to go to raves 3 years ago in this suitcase. And I took them, and the boss of the company really enjoyed what I was showing, and so he offered me the opportunity to go with him and his company to a trade show. And so a week later, with my own hand-sewn samples, we went to trade show, and I opened 3 really major accounts for him that he was trying to get into for such a long time. And the day after, he signed me, and I ended up staying in New York for 3-4 years.
And then, so when did you go back to Denver? And so you were back in Denver when you tried out for Project Runway?
Right. I went back to Denver after breaking my hip in New York. I fell on some ice and fell and broke my hip. And so I went back to Denver, and I was really super depressed. I didn't work for about a year. And finally, I got a job in the theater business as a stitcher in a professional theater. And, I will tell you, in the beginning, as a designer, I wasn't really technically adapt to the sewing skills that I needed. Do we need to stop? So I moved back to Denver, and I was in a really low place. I didn't work for about a year, and then finally I got the opportunity to work in a professional theater as a stitcher. And, it was a chance job for me because the boss there saw my portfolio, and it was all fashion, and it wasn't anything that I had sewn with my hands. And, that's the position I was working for. But she really took, a chance on me. And I went in, and she gave me this job to, flat pattern this crazy pattern. And from just watching my pattern maker in New York, I knew how to do it. I don't know how I need to do it, but I finished it, and I accomplished it. And from then on, I just kept on growing. And for 5 years, I was stuck at the Arvada Center in Denver, or in Arvada, Colorado. But the thing about it is, like, I didn't really have the skill set before had that experience there. And so I'm really, really super, super grateful and appreciative of what they taught me, because, getting on Project Runway requires you to really not only be a designer, but also to build your looks. And I think when I was in the theater, I kind of thought to myself, man, I'm stuck in this basement sewing day after day after day after day after day. And I would think back to New York and how fabulous my life was and how much I was getting paid, and I was creating fashion, and how I love that energy. I love the competition, all that. And I was like, and the girls in the theater who had been working at the theater for 30 plus years, all of them, would tell me, you should see the show, like, you should be on it. And so I started watching it, I think in like season 5 or something, and I was still like staying there at the theater, and I did a couple of competitions in Denver and win them and whatever. And so I auditioned in, I think for season 7, and I made it all the way to the very, very, very end, and they picked 15 contestants, and I was chosen as an alternate. And when I called them, I was like, why was I chosen as an alternate? Of course they couldn't tell me, but they said I was number 16. So I was praying and hoping that somebody would break their neck or something and not be able to go to the show and I'd get in. But, I think, just like I said, I think everything happens for a reason. So I jumped back on the horse and auditioned for season 8, and the rest is kind of, I guess, history, right?
So I know you talked a little about being really depressed when you broke your hip and moved back to Denver. What is your advice for people who find themselves in any unbearable situation, in any terms, to find their way out? And how did you come back from the low point in your own life?
Well, I think the thing about it is that you have to really understand and allow people to love you and allow yourself to love other people. But the thing that you have to remember is that you have to start with loving yourself. And that's really what it boils down to.
So I'm not going to ask you about your experience with, your endeavor with coming out as HIV positive on the show. I know how it affected me and thousands of people. And I know that I've read that you don't want to become the poster child for HIV. So I know you did a lot on World AIDS Day, and you're doing some stuff with that. I just want to know what Mondo's take on this is, and just what you plan on doing in the future as a person and as a designer in general.
Right. Well, I definitely, there's definitely a divider between who I am as Mondo every day, and then there's Mondo as the creative. And, I have had the chance to talk on Capitol Hill and talk out about the stigma behind being HIV positive and dealing with AIDS. For me, I think that the conversation about HIV/AIDS has stopped because there are forms of medicating yourself to live a healthy, strong life. But I don't think it should stop there. I think that we have to open up the conversation again, because it's still an epidemic. And beyond our country, it's a pandemic. And I think it's important to continue to talk about it, because a lot of young people have allowed themselves to fall short or make negative decisions. And, there is medicine, but you have to, like I said, you have to love yourself so much more and continue on and really be proud of what you are, and don't allow your intentions to control your, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's such a different world for me today than it was 10 years ago. I just think that we need to continue to talk about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Mondo.
All right.
And I know I speak for myself, and I think everyone here, we just have had a great day spending with you and as a person and a designer in general.
Well, thank you. You know what? It's my first time in Chicago, and it's very welcoming, so thank you.
Okay.